Within the confines of a tranquil service station, Officer Bradley's body camera meticulously documented the instance when he initiated unwarranted harassment of a black individual who had committed no offense beyond exiting an opulent automobile. From the very outset, upon observing him, the officer conducted himself as though he had already apprehended a perpetrator in plain view, transforming a routine refueling stop into a high-stakes felony inquiry. The events that transpired and were subsequently captured on that recording would later emerge as a pivotal piece of evidence, marking the commencement of a scandal that his department had never anticipated. Before we proceed any further, kindly indicate in the comments section from what part of the world you're observing and ensure that you subscribe, as the narrative scheduled for tomorrow is one you will not want to miss. Officer Bradley Mason, a patrol officer aged 38, was recognized within the department for possessing a keen observational ability and an even sharper wit. He had a lengthy history of documented complaints that yielded no discernible outcome, primarily originating from motorists whom he had detained for what his official reports characterized as suspicious behavior. However, to those individuals who directly experienced his actions, the pattern was unequivocally apparent. Bradley consistently seemed to harbor a predisposition against a particular demographic. He embodied the archetype of an officer who dispensed with the need for tangible evidence to formulate assumptions. A cursory glance, a preconceived notion, and the authority of his badge were all he required to validate his suspicions. His body camera vividly depicts him disembarking from his patrol vehicle with a measured, unhurried gait. His gaze was directed towards Pump 3, where the luxury vehicle had just come to rest. He remained oblivious to the serene ambience surrounding him, the gentle murmur of passing vehicles, the attendant diligently sweeping the storefront, the sunbeams glinting off car windshields. His sole focus was the driver. In Bradley's perception, the confluence of that man and that automobile was an incongruous pairing. The driver had not even completed the act of removing his fuel cap when Bradley was already advancing towards him. And it was at this juncture that the camera's perspective shifted to the individual who would subsequently reverberate through the entire department. The gentleman at Pump 3 is Jordan Hale, age 41, a highly respected judge who had meticulously cultivated his entire professional standing on the principles of discipline, measured contemplation, and the fearless prosecution of corruption. However, none of these attributes were immediately discernible in the captured footage. The camera portrays him clad in casual attire, a dark t-shirt, a wristwatch, keys in hand, presenting as merely a man refueling his vehicle, poised to continue with his day. He had absolutely no premonition of impending trouble. He was entirely unaware that he was about to become the focal point of a confrontation that would ultimately escalate into one of the most significant legal actions the city had ever witnessed. Initially, Jordan was preoccupied with selecting the appropriate fuel grade on the display screen, attuned to the rhythmic click of the pump behind him. However, Bradley's shadow fell across the side of the car even before his voice registered. "Hey, do you mind informing me what your intentions are with this vehicle?" This was not a genuine inquiry. It was an outright accusation. Jordan slowly turned, a bewildered expression on his face. "Just filling up." "Is there an issue, officer?" Bradley abstained from answering the question directly. Instead, the body camera recorded the way his eyes meticulously scrutinized the car once more. Then, his gaze shifted to Jordan and back to the automobile, as if he were actively searching for something that was conspicuously absent. "Is this yours?" he inquired, his tone already conveying profound disbelief. Jordan held the fuel nozzle loosely in his hand, maintaining a composed posture. "Yes, it is unequivocally mine." Bradley responded with a tight, dismissive chuckle. "Right. And from what precise location did you acquire a vehicle of this caliber?" The tension did not erupt at this precise moment. It simmered, a slow, insidious burn. It was the sort of interlude that viewers experience viscerally, their chests tightening due to the palpable injustice of the situation, which the officer deliberately feigned not to perceive. And this precisely is what the gas station's surveillance cameras meticulously recorded: the genesis of a confrontation fueled not by the letter of the law, but by ingrained prejudice. Jordan endeavored to maintain a measured demeanor. "Is there a problem that you can elucidate for me?" Bradley moved closer, intentionally encroaching upon Jordan's personal space. "Yeah, the problem is that I've never encountered you in this vicinity driving a vehicle of this nature. You appear somewhat out of your element." And there it was, the statement that investigators would later highlight as the initial unambiguous indicator of profiling. However, in the immediate temporal context, Jordan did not falter. He did not raise his voice. He simply replaced the fuel nozzle back into the pump and faced Bradley with unyielding patience. "I am not obligated to reside in this neighborhood to purchase gasoline, officer." The camera judders slightly as Bradley adjusts his stance, already displaying irritation that his suspicions were not met with apprehension or compliance. "Permit me to examine your identification," he demanded. "What is the rationale for this stop?" Jordan inquired. Bradley leaned in, his voice lowered, yet his hostility remained undiminished. "The reason is quite straightforward. You are not congruent with the vehicle you are operating." That particular assertion would later be recurrently cited in courtroom transcripts, internal affairs interviews, and various digital media clips. However, in that specific moment, Jordan possessed no inkling of the magnitude it would eventually attain. He was acutely aware only that he was being singled out for reasons entirely unrelated to any infraction of the law. Maintaining his composure, he deliberately reached into his wallet. "Here," he stated, "is this sufficient to elucidate anything?" However, Bradley did not even deign to look at the identification. His gaze remained fixed upon the car door, the interior, the wheel rims, perpetually searching for any pretext to escalate the situation, and it was then that he activated his radio. "Dispatch. I require an additional unit at the service station. Potential stolen vehicle." Jordan's facial expression undergoes a subtle alteration, not one of fear, but rather of profound disbelief. He had just borne witness to the exact moment the officer decided that factual accuracy was an irrelevant consideration, and this was merely the prologue. Jordan's expression remained frozen for a brief interval as Bradley addressed the radio. He was not taken aback by the accusation. Having worked within the justice system for a considerable duration, he instantly recognized the precise juncture when an officer opted to manufacture a transgression rather than address an existing one. Nevertheless, it still inflicted a sting, not due to any apprehension of subsequent repercussions, but rather because he already possessed an acute understanding of the inevitable trajectory this encounter was destined to follow. The pump emitted a click behind him, signifying the completion of its refueling cycle. However, Jordan made no move to retrieve the nozzle. He simply observed Bradley, his gaze fixed on the officer's countenance, which contorted with a self-assurance predicated on nothing more substantial than prejudice artfully concealed beneath a veneer of authority. Subsequent investigations definitively established that there was no reported stolen vehicle, no observed suspicious activity, and unequivocally no legal justification for initiating a stop. By the time the auxiliary unit arrived, the situation had already been characterized as a criminal investigation. Bradley wasted no time. While Jordan stood motionless, the officer commenced a series of tight, deliberate circuits around the opulent automobile, peering intently through the windows as though he anticipated stolen merchandise materializing within its confines. He lightly tugged on the driver's door handle, testing its security, despite lacking any legal authorization to conduct a search. Jordan inhaled deeply, attempting to quell the burgeoning frustration. "Officer," he articulated, maintaining a controlled tone, "I must request that you cease touching my vehicle." Bradley straightened up, a faint smirk gracing his lips. "Relax. If the vehicle truly belongs to you, you should have absolutely nothing to be concerned about." Jordan's gaze met his. "That is not how the legal system operates." The officer offered no reply. Instead, the distinctive sound of tires crunching over loose gravel drew the attention of both individuals towards the roadway as a second patrol car entered the service station at a velocity entirely unwarranted for a situation lacking any semblance of an emergency. The body camera captures the precise instant the second officer, identified as Officer Riker, a considerably younger officer possessing a similar professional reputation to Bradley, disembarks, his eyes immediately fixated on Jordan rather than the individual who had initially requested backup. Science. Riker did not inquire about the preceding events, nor did he solicit any details. He did not even acknowledge the peaceful surroundings. He advanced directly towards Jordan as though a verdict had already been rendered. "This is the individual?" Riker inquired. Bradley responded with a nod. "Yep." He asserts that this vehicle is his. Jordan raised his hand slightly, palms open, hoping this gesture would convey a sense of calm. "It is not an assertion, it is a factual statement. It is mine." I provided him with my identification. He did not even look at it. Riker completely disregarded this statement and moved towards the vehicle, his gaze sweeping over the rims, the paintwork, and the interior. "This is a six-figure automobile," he muttered, shaking his head as if this solitary fact adequately justified their suspicions. "It doesn't fit." "It doesn't fit what?" Jordan inquired. Bradley interjected before Riker could respond. "It doesn't fit the profile." This precise phrase, "the profile," subsequently became a central element in the ensuing lawsuit. Post-investigation inquiries conclusively determined that no official profile existed. The sole discernible profile present was racial in nature. Riker moved even closer. "Look, man," he stated, adopting an apparently reasonable demeanor. "Just tell us where you obtained it." Jordan's voice remained even. "I am under no obligation to furnish you with an explanation for possessing my own property." That response evidently did not resonate favorably. Bradley maneuvered around Riker, positioning himself directly between Jordan and the car as though asserting ownership through sheer proximity. "Turn around," he commanded, indicating that Jordan should place his hands behind his back. Jordan remained immobile. "You possess no legal grounds to detain me." Riker spread his arms wide. "You are exhibiting signs of nervousness. That constitutes sufficient justification." Jordan's gaze flickered from one officer to the other, his composure beginning to solidify into an unyielding resolve. "I am exhibiting patience, profound patience, which is considerably more than either of you is currently demonstrating towards me." However, rational discourse held no sway. Their minds were irrevocably made up. Bradley seized Jordan's wrist. The body camera judders perceptibly as resistance is presumed in the absence of any actual struggle. Jordan does not resist. He simply stands unmoving, permitting the handcuffs to fasten around his wrists, despite his profound awareness that this entire engagement is fundamentally unlawful. The cashier stationed inside the service station observes the unfolding scene and moves closer to the glass, watching intently. A motorist refueling at the adjacent pump retrieves his mobile device, commencing a recording. The situation is rapidly deteriorating. Bradley propels Jordan against the side of the car, not with undue force but with sufficient firmness to assert dominance. "We will resolve this momentarily," he stated, feigning adherence to established procedure. Jordan maintained a steady tone. "You are currently infringing upon numerous constitutional rights." Riker emitted a low chuckle. "Yeah, and who exactly do you consider yourself to be to lecture us?" Jordan's eyes, calm, filled with frustration, yet devoid of fear, met theirs. "I am an individual who possesses a far more comprehensive understanding of the law than either of you." Bradley scoffed. "Sure you do." He then turned towards Riker. "Search the vehicle." Riker advanced towards the driver's door, his hand already raised, and it was at this precise juncture that Jordan uttered the declaration that irrevocably altered the trajectory of this apprehension. "You are about to add an illegal search to the ledger." Riker froze, mid-motion. "Can he speak like that?" Riker muttered. Bradley shrugged. "It makes no difference. We will discover something." But just as Riker reached for the door handle, a new sound permeated the atmosphere, the steady hum of a third vehicle entering the premises. This vehicle was not a patrol cruiser. It was an unmarked black SUV. The driver's door opened deliberately, and a figure emerged, attired in a formal shirt with a badge clipped to his belt. The body camera records a tightening of Bradley's facial expression. He had not summoned a supervisor, yet one had unexpectedly arrived, and for the very first time since the stop had commenced, Bradley appeared visibly unnerved. The atmosphere within the service station seemed to intensify, almost as if time itself had decelerated. Bradley's customary smirk had vanished, supplanted by a subtle undercurrent of tension that he made no attempt to conceal. His body camera wobbled slightly as he shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his gaze directed towards the approaching figure, the supervisor he had not requested, but to whom he now had no choice but to account. The individual alighting from the unmarked SUV moved with an aura of quiet authority. His name was Captain Reynolds, a seasoned officer of 52 years with decades of experience within the department. He had presided over countless traffic stops, but this particular encounter immediately commanded his attention. A black man in an expensive car, two officers aggressively confronting him in front of a service station, a burgeoning assembly of onlookers, and the unmistakable undercurrent of escalating racial tension. Captain Reynolds initiated the conversation, his voice measured but imbued with considerable gravitas. "What is transpiring here?" Bradley straightened, endeavoring to reassert his usual control. "Merely a routine inspection, sir. We observed an individual operating a vehicle that does not align with his perceived demographic." Jordan, remaining calm and composed, did not flinch. He met Captain Reynolds' gaze directly. "I've committed no wrongdoing. They are detaining me and attempting to search my vehicle without any justifiable cause." The supervisor's brow furrowed. "Sir," he stated, gesturing towards Bradley, "kindly provide an explanation." Bradley hesitated, his words faltering. He does not appear to be the owner of the automobile. We found it suspicious." Riker, standing rigidly beside Bradley, interjected, "We believed it was standard protocol, sir." Captain Reynolds exhaled slowly and moved closer to Jordan. "Your name and identification, if you please." Jordan articulated his response clearly. "Jordan Hale, District Court Judge. Here are my credentials." He presented his badge and identification without breaking eye contact. The camera captures the fractional second when the expressions of both officers undergo a dramatic transformation. Bradley's jaw tightens perceptibly. Riker's eyes widen in astonishment. Neither officer had remotely anticipated that the individual they were subjecting to harassment held such a position of authority. Captain Reynolds briefly perused the identification, then consulted his tablet, cross-referencing the information within the system. "That is accurate," he stated quietly. Then, addressing the officers with amplified volume, "Remove the restraints immediately." Bradley and Riker exchanged furtive glances. They hesitated, their panic palpable. Bradley opened his mouth to speak, then promptly closed it. He was acutely aware that every aspect of this encounter had been meticulously recorded. The unlawful detainment, the manifest racial prejudice, the physical intimidation, the spoken words captured by the body camera. Jordan, still exuding calm, stated, "You are aware, of course, that all of this is being recorded, are you not?" Bradley swallowed with evident difficulty. "Yes, but—" Captain Reynolds intervened decisively. "Undo everything without delay." The cuffs clicked open. Jordan slowly rubbed his wrists, maintaining an unwavering composure. Each step he took as he moved back towards his vehicle was deliberate and controlled. He had no need to utter a single word. The visual evidence was communicating a far more potent message than any verbal utterance could possibly convey. Riker stammered, attempting to rationalize his actions. "We were merely adhering to established procedures." Bradley interrupted, his voice exhibiting a slight tremor. "Sir, we believed he might be—" Captain Reynolds cut them off abruptly. "Enough. The two of you will provide a comprehensive statement detailing precisely why you deemed it necessary to subject a black judge operating an expensive automobile to this particular form of scrutiny." Jordan stepped fully away from the vehicle, his posture straightening, and directed an unwavering gaze at the officers. "This is not a matter of procedure. This is fundamentally about ingrained prejudice, and it will be addressed in the appropriate manner." The body camera vividly captures Bradley's palpable disquietude as he grapples with the realization that the individual he had presumed to intimidate was, in fact, the one wielding authority. His facial expression fluctuated between disbelief, apprehension, and the dawning comprehension that no utterance he might offer could possibly erase the concrete evidence of his transgressions. Concurrently, Captain Reynolds gestured towards the service station, and the assembled onlookers, some actively recording, others still observing from the vicinity of the pumps, silently registered the palpable shift in the atmosphere. The collective consciousness of the crowd perceived the change. The balance of power had decisively shifted, and the officers, who moments earlier had exuded an air of assured confidence, now appeared utterly out of their element. Jordan opened the driver's side door, placed his hand on the handle, and paused. He cast a final glance at Bradley and Riker. His voice, though calm, carried an undeniable firmness. This incident will not be overlooked. Bradley fumbled for a suitable response, but the words eluded him. Riker averted his gaze, nervously adjusting his belt. Both officers were acutely aware that the recorded footage, the presence of witnesses, and now the direct intervention of their supervisor all stood in stark opposition to the narrative they had attempted to construct. Jordan slid into the driver's seat of his luxurious vehicle. The low thrum of the engine filled the air, a subtle yet potent reminder of authority and control. Bradley and Riker instinctively stepped back, comprehending that the situation had completely spiraled beyond their grasp. Captain Reynolds observed the two officers intently. "You will submit a complete account of this stop, every granular detail, and you will do so with absolute honesty. Any deviation from this directive will only exacerbate your predicament." Jordan drove away at a measured pace, leaving the service station behind, but not the profound message he had delivered. Every movement, every word spoken, every gesture made had been meticulously documented, and the repercussions were already beginning to permeate the department. What Bradley and Riker failed to comprehend was that every single second of body camera footage, every bystander present at the station, and every word uttered would collectively form the bedrock of a legal case that would profoundly destabilize their entire command structure and ultimately impose a financial burden of millions upon the department. As Jordan's vehicle receded into the distance, the palpable tension lingered. Bradley exhaled sharply, attempting to regain his composure, but the camera's unflinching gaze revealed everything: the nascent fear, the undeniable guilt, and the stark realization that his ingrained assumptions and pervasive biases had finally caught up with him. And this, he understood, was merely the nascent stage. Jordan Hale's vehicle departed from the ostensibly tranquil service station, yet the events that had just transpired were far from concluded. Within a matter of hours, the body camera footage from Bradley, in conjunction with the internal surveillance recordings from the service station, began to circulate internally throughout the police department. Each captured second meticulously documented the unwarranted suspicion, the invasive physical gestures, the officer's steadfast refusal to acknowledge Jordan's calm compliance, and the overt racial prejudice that unequivocally permeated the actions of both officers. By the subsequent morning, the narrative of the incident had already initiated ripples of disruption that would profoundly unsettle the department to its very core. Internal Affairs promptly launched a formal investigation. Every single frame of the video evidence was subjected to intense scrutiny. Investigators meticulously highlighted the initial suspicious utterance by Bradley, "He doesn't match the car he's driving," as the preeminent indicator of racial profiling. They meticulously traced every single illegal maneuver, the attempted vehicular search, the instance of physical intimidation, the outright refusal to acknowledge Jordan's presented identification, and the overt bias that demonstrably governed the conduct of both officers. In their subsequent interviews, Riker and Bradley attempted to mount a defense, steadfastly insisting that they were merely adhering to standard operational procedures. However, the captured footage presented an irrefutable counter-narrative. Their verbal pronouncements rang hollow against the undeniable weight of recorded truth. Concurrently, Jordan initiated contact with his legal counsel. Subsequently, they formally filed a civil rights lawsuit against the city and the police department, seeking substantial compensation for racial profiling, illegal detainment, the attempted unlawful search, inflicted emotional distress, and egregious abuse of authority. The lawsuit cited the body camera footage as incontrovertible evidence of both bias and profound misconduct, unequivocally demonstrating how a seemingly routine traffic stop at a quiet service station had gratuitously escalated into a blatant violation of fundamental constitutional rights. The claimed damages totaled a staggering $14 million. News organizations rapidly seized upon the developing story. Excerpts of the confrontation were broadcast across television screens, disseminated through social media platforms, and prominently featured on various online news portals. Analysts meticulously dissected each critical moment, the officer's presumptuous assumptions, the unwarranted escalation of the encounter, and Jordan's steadfast professionalism throughout the ordeal. Viewers universally recognized the stark contrast presented: a composed black gentleman possessing an expensive automobile subjected to unwarranted harassment by law enforcement officers who had preemptively imputed guilt based solely on his outward appearance. Public indignation surged exponentially. Social media platforms were inundated with comments. Individuals vociferously condemned the officer's actions, demanded accountability, and lauded Jordan for his remarkable patience and unwavering courage. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was undeniably tense. Jordan maintained a calm demeanor, meticulously reviewing his notes, his posture reflecting years of disciplined professional engagement. Bradley and Riker appeared noticeably uneasy, shifting uncomfortably in their seats, visible perspiration indicating their stress. Legal representatives presented crucial segments from the body camera footage, pausing at pivotal junctures. These included Bradley's ill-advised reach for the car handle without legal authorization, Riker's verbal assertion that Jordan was evidently out of place, and the definitive moment they attempted to detain him. Witnesses from the service station provided their eyewitness accounts, meticulously emphasizing Jordan's composed disposition and the officer's overtly aggressive conduct. During their sworn depositions, Bradley repeatedly offered the same justification he had previously presented to the department. "I thought it was suspicious." Riker echoed his sentiments. Both officers were subsequently confronted with meticulously presented evidence, frame by frame, irrefutably demonstrating that Jordan had consistently complied, had spoken with utmost respect, and had promptly provided his identification. Every single motion, every spoken word, every deliberate step evinced unparalleled professionalism and commendable restraint. The jury was presented with a clear, real-time juxtaposition between lawful conduct and prejudiced assumptions. The settlement was swiftly reached once the overwhelming weight of the accumulated evidence became undeniably apparent. The city formally agreed to disburse the sum of $14 million to Jordan Hale, thereby acknowledging the profound injustice and the officer's egregious misconduct. Both Bradley and Riker were subsequently terminated from their positions, their professional careers ending in ignominious disgrace. The settlement subsequently became an integral component of law enforcement training programs, serving as a stark and cautionary reminder of how unchecked bias can transform a routine interaction into a financially catastrophic debacle. Even with the pandemonium and scrutiny, Jordan maintained an unruffled and deliberate composure. He resumed his judicial responsibilities, earning the admiration of both his peers and the general populace. Each action he took, each utterance he made, served as a potent reminder that professionalism and forbearance could triumph even when faced with intense provocation. He had transformed a vexing ordeal into a landmark legal triumph, demonstrating that a commitment to accountability and fairness could surmount deeply ingrained biases. The impact of these events extended far beyond the initial confrontation. The law enforcement agency instituted more rigorous procedures for traffic stops, placing a strong emphasis on training to combat prejudice and reinforcing stricter supervisory measures. The news outlets continued their reporting, underscoring how a seemingly ordinary stop for fuel had brought to light systemic deficiencies and catalyzed significant improvements. Jordan's experience became a widespread illustration, a poignant reminder that no individual, irrespective of their standing or advantages, should ever endure mistreatment rooted in their race or unfounded assumptions. Even after a considerable period, the fuel station endured as a tangible reminder of the incident. Employees would recount the events to visitors in hushed tones, describing the day a gentleman in a high-end vehicle stood firm against officers who evidently presumed they could overawe him. The recorded evidence remained available for educational purposes, illustrating how a tranquil, self-possessed opposition to injustice could yield profound outcomes. The wearable cameras, the eyewitness accounts, and Jordan's unwavering professionalism collectively guaranteed that accountability was not a matter of choice. What commenced as a routine encounter at an unassuming service station evolved into a pivotal juncture not only for Jordan but also for the surrounding community, the police force, and for anyone observing who grasped the significance of the situation. As Jordan departed the vicinity once more, the sunlight glinting off the immaculate finish of his automobile, no words were necessary. Each mile he traversed, distancing himself from the gas station, served as a potent message to observers everywhere that valor, patience, and a clear understanding of one's rights could transform a miscarriage of justice into a definitive win. The missteps of Bradley and Riker would not be forgotten. The legal challenge would be cited for many years to come, and the unassuming service station would forever be recognized as the genesis of transformation. If you are of the conviction that impartiality should invariably supersede prejudice, please disseminate this narrative, share your perspectives in the comments, and subscribe, for occurrences like these serve to underscore the vital importance of accountability.